History is not dead, it is hidden. Subscribe to ZX History and like this video to uncover forgotten legends and lost empires. Now, let's begin today's journey into the past.
Frederick Barbarossa, the Iron Emperor of the West. The Hook, the legend of the mountain. In the dark, echoing depths of the Kyffhäuser Mountain in Germany, a legend whispers through the stone. They say he is not dead. They say he sits at a stone table, his fiery red beard growing through the rock itself. For 800 years he has waited. He is Frederick I, known to the world as Barbarossa. But before he became a myth, he was a man who set the world on fire. He was the sword of the Holy Roman Empire, a man who challenged popes, crushed cities, and sought to reclaim the glory of the Caesars. This is the blood-soaked, golden-crowned history of the Red Beard. A house divided, 1122 to 1152. The story begins in 1122. Germany is a fractured chessboard of warring dukes. Frederick was born into the highest stakes possible, a child of two rival bloodlines, the Hohenstaufens and the Welfs. He was the bridge between enemies. Growing up in a world of steel and prayer, Frederick learned early that power isn't given, it is seized. In 1147, he joined the Second Crusade alongside his uncle, King Conrad III. He saw the scorching sands of the Holy Land and the glittering spires of Constantinople. He saw how empires crumbled and how leaders failed. He returned not just as a knight, but as a visionary. When Conrad died in 1152, the princes didn't look for the rightful heir, they looked for the strongest. On March 4th, 1152, Frederick was elected King of Germany. The Red Beard had arrived. The Dream of Rome, 1154 to 1155. Frederick didn't just want to be a king, he wanted to be an emperor. To him, the Holy Roman Empire was the direct successor to the ancient Roman Empire. But there was one obstacle, the Pope. In 1154, Frederick crossed the Alps. His destination? Rome. The journey was a gauntlet of defiance. He reached the city in 1155 to meet Pope Adrian IV. The tension was suffocating. Protocol demanded Frederick hold the Pope's stirrup, a sign of submission. Frederick refused. The world held its breath. Eventually, a compromise was struck, and on June 18, 1155, he was crowned Holy Roman Emperor. But the peace was a lie. As the crown touched his head, the citizens of Rome rose in a bloody revolt. Frederick's knights responded with a massacre. The Tiber River ran red. The message was clear. Barbarossa would rule by the sword or not at all. The Scourge of Italy, 1158 to 1162. Northern Italy was the jewel of Europe, rich, defiant, and independent. To Barbarossa, they were rebels. In 1158, he issued the Roncaglian decrees, stripping the Italian cities of their rights. The city of Milan became the symbol of resistance. For years, Frederick besieged it. In 1162, Milan finally fell. What followed was an act of calculated brutality that shocked Christendom. He ordered the city to be evacuated, and then he systematically leveled it to the ground. He sowed salt into the earth. The great walls were demolished. He took the relics of the three magi and sent them to Cologne. He wanted the world to know, to defy the emperor is to invite total annihilation. The Great Schism and the Lombard League, 1160 to 1176. But power creates its own enemies. The Papacy feared him. After Adrian IV died, a double election split the church. Frederick backed his own anti-pope, leading to a decades-long conflict known as the Great Schism. The Italian cities, fueled by hatred for the Red Beard, formed the Lombard League. They weren't just fighting for land, They were fighting for their souls. For years, it was a cat-and-mouse game across the Italian plains. Then came 1176, the year the myth of invincibility shattered. At the Battle of Legnano, the Italian infantry, protecting their carroccio, sacred war chariot, stood their ground against the heavy German cavalry. Frederick was unhorsed. Rumors spread that he was dead. The imperial army was routed. It was a humiliating defeat that forced Frederick to the negotiating table. At the Peace of Venice in 1177, the Iron Emperor was forced to kneel before Pope Alexander III. The lion had been tamed, or so they thought. The Final Crusade, 1187 to 1190. As Frederick aged, he became a statesman, but his heart remained that of a warrior. In 1187, the news broke that sent a shiver through Europe. Saladin had captured Jerusalem. At nearly 70 years old, an age when most men were in their graves, Frederick took up the cross. He organized the largest crusading army the world had ever seen, nearly 100,000 men. He didn't take the easy sea route like King Richard the Lionheart. He marched across the brutal terrain of Anatolia. He crushed the Seljuk Turks at the Battle of Iconium in 1190. He was at the height of his power, a living god of war, moving toward the holy city. Saladin was terrified. The clash of the two greatest legends of the age was imminent. The Saleph River, June 10th, 1190. Then the unthinkable happened. On June 10th, 1190, the army reached the Saleph River in modern-day Turkey. The water was icy and swift. Frederick, impatient and bold as always, urged his horse into the water. What happened next is debated by history. Some say his horse slipped. Others say the shock of the cold water stopped his heart. The great emperor, the scourge of Italy, the man who survived 100 battles, drowned in waist-deep water. His army collapsed in grief. Without their son, the German crusade withered away. The red beard never reached Jerusalem. The epilogue, the sleeping king. They say his body was preserved in vinegar, parts of him buried in various holy sites, but his soul never left the German people. The legend of the Kyffhäuser grew. It was said that when the ravens stop flying around the mountain, Barbarossa will wake, draw his sword, and restore Germany to its former glory. Frederick Barbarossa was a man of contradictions, a brutal conqueror and a brilliant lawmaker, a devout Christian and a persistent enemy of the Pope. He was the last true world emperor. His life reminds us that even the most powerful men are subject to the whims of fate, yet their shadows can stretch across 1,000 years.